But he is asking, what's your view, Caleb, on locking the code or trying to have authority ownership of your code once it's installed, assumably not giving access to the end user to be able to go change code? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've never done it. This is just me personally. I'm not saying it's right or wrong for the right situation. You're doing some top secret government work or something like that crazy. Sure, maybe there's a time and place for it. But from the locked user code I've seen, there was definitely not an excuse for it. And I think that's just kind of the 90s, early 2000s ideology of like, oh, we've got a special skill that nobody really knows about yet. We're going to lock it down and make millions off of it. Well, my theory is if I'm honest with the customer and I treat them well, they're going to keep doing business with me. So that's what I do. I don't hide nothing.
Yeah, I would say I would generally agree with that. And I think Vlad and I generally agree with that. So I have seen a couple of OEMs that specifically lock their code down as to if there's actually intellectual property in that code, or if you can go through and figure it out. I know you can go through and figure it out because most of the time the issues that you run into, you have to go rip it off of one PLC and put it on another PLC because the PLC that they've programmed on isn't the standard of the facility. And so all of those things are doable. I think, to your point, Caleb, it's a very like 90s, early 2000s. I'm going to try to lock in the customer, but I think it frustrates customers more than anything else.
Now I do think. Go ahead. I think there. Oh no. I think that there is a place. I definitely would say for like people like OEMs that have say you have something special. You're an OEM that's cutting technology. Yep. I could see where you wouldn't want that, not necessarily for your customer, but getting in the hands of the competition. I think there's a place for maybe legal contracts between you and the customer during all that. But this is just an opinion on me. I'm not stating anything. I'm not saying what's the law. This is just my opinion. But if that's the case, I think personally, I've never been in a situation, Kaleb Travis, where it didn't benefit me for my customer to really understand what they have going on. Because when they call me at 2 a.m, I would rather them at least be able to look at the code and tell me, somewhere around the mark what's going on versus saying like, hey, the program changed. Because dude, I hear that something in the program changed and I'm just like, oh God, here we go. The program didn't change. Let me log in, whatever. But it's always benefited me for my customers to know what they've got going on. Because if we're troubleshooting something over the phone, it helps me when they can tell me an educated sector of what they're actually looking at, or, their production's better because they know how it really is supposed to work. And if they're paying that much money for it, dude, I think they should have their stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say again, like maybe there's some need for an NDA, right? Like you said, if the competition gets a hold of that piece of equipment or it's sold off to somebody else, like sure, I could see how that could be an issue. But at the same time, I think, again, if you're in a maintenance team and you're trying to troubleshoot that piece of equipment and you're not in the business, like most end users are not in the business, or they're not going to shift their business to creating that machinery, right? A production facility is not going to go from one day to the next. We're going to stop operations. And because we've discovered this piece of code, we're now going to produce these machines. I don't think I've never heard of that happening. So I personally really despise, I would say, programmers who lock up their code for that reason, because I think it's, as we talked about in the networking side of things with Dave, I see that as a challenge, personally. Can I crack into their code and figure out what it is? But also, like,
you didn't say that on air. Take that out.
I mean, they're locking up code. So, but anyways, like what I would say also, I think, if you're, I would say like an engineer who's trying to maybe play it safe and create an environment where you're locking down your job, where you're required to service those machines, I would say that an engineer who can almost work themselves out of a job by automating, the processes so well is going to be worth 10 times more than what they currently are, right? Like that. And I think like that's something that people underestimate, in the sense that, again, if you're trying to secure your job by password protecting the code and having to be called, if you were to give a service so good that they can maintain the code and understand the code well, they're going to call you back a lot more so that you could do or figure out their other machinery. Yeah,
and I can attest to that theory right there because, dude, I'm by far not the baddest man on a on the planet with a PLC. I know dude, there's some killers out there like Matt Paulson and you guys. They're just some of these guys that aren't even well known and just are killers, you know. But I can say I get repeat business all the time. And a lot of my customers like tell me like, dude, you got it. You're the best. I don't want to. And I'm like, dude, I'm not the best, but okay. You know, we have a good relationship and I'm glad you trust me that much. But the only thing that separates is I'm always honest with them. Like, I'm not going to tell them I know how to do something. I'll tell them like, hey, I don't know this, but I will figure it out. You know, just being upfront with you. I think being upfront and doing what you say you're going to do and always being very clear. Like, you have to be transparent on these jobs. Like, what's in the scope and make sure you're on the same page, because a lot of these jobs can get out of scope real quick. And I think integrators just rack up the hours because like, hey, the customer told me to do it. And with all the chaos going on, nobody's documenting what was originally the scope and what's not. Yes. And so then they end up with this huge bill. And now the customer's pissed and they don't want to pay it, right? But technically the programmers and the integrator did what they're supposed to. I think this can be prevented. I know this because I'm doing it. And lots of other people are doing it. Like, be transparent with your customers. Don't be secrety. Super douche. Oh, I just said that on the air. Sorry, but that came out. I'm sorry, but seriously, like, you know, just stop. You know, this ain't some secret sorcery code. Like, this is something we're all doing. You know, if you're that worried about, like, then go harder, learn more. If you're worried somebody's going to catch up to you, you should be grinding 10 times harder to make sure they don't catch up to you. And if you automate yourself out of a job, that you probably are going to get bumped into a better job, because now you've opened yourself to exposure, and you can literally tell the next job. If you could put it out there on LinkedIn, the day of social media, that you just automated this so well, you automated yourself out of a job, there's going to be people hitting you up left and right. But where I think you set your own cap is where you, like we talked about, you're locking people out of the code. You're trying to secure your job. All about perspective here, because I'm thinking if you stay there forever, to me, you're not climbing. And I don't know about y'all, but like, I want to constantly go up. So I think there's way better ways to do things. And I completely agree with both of you on that subject, for sure.
Absolutely.